Hi there, welcome to another episode of the EcoSend podcast. I'm your host, James, and I am thrilled to bring you another episode of the show. For those of you new to the show, this show is all about people who are in the world of business, making the world a little bit better, whether that's through what they're doing from a charitable perspective, from a planet and climate and sustainability perspective, or other ways they're inspiring people to take action. I am thrilled today to be joined by Matt Ville, who is the founder and CTO of HiYield. Matt's got tons of experience in the tech world and is running one of an award-winning agency, one of the great agencies Growth Index 2024 leaders. So I am very excited today to be joined by Matt. Matt is going to be talking to us about AI and sustainability. And I know a lot of people have AI on their minds. It's very hard to go through the world right now without bumping into AI, but there's a lot of questions around sustainability and what it means for sustainability. So I'm excited to dive in. Matt, hi, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Very good. Thank you, James. Thanks for having me on. Delighted to be here.
Amazing. Thank you for being here, Matt. We've had the pleasure of knowing each other, I think, through the internet for a while. So it's great to be chatting. Matt, tell us a little bit more about what you're up to and what you're doing with HiYield.
Yeah. So it's always a bit of a roller coaster in agency land, and I don't think the last kind of 18 months have been any different. So actually, I founded HiYield back in 2019. Like pretty much six to 9 months in, we had COVID, and that was like, wow,
Yes.
what's going on here? Nobody really knows what's going on. Trying to find our way through that, and then obviously, I think coming out of that, we had like a really kind of quite a high growth period where lots of people were investing the money that they'd been sat on through the COVID period and building lots of really great new stuff. And then obviously in the last kind of probably 18 months, it's the kind of economy hasn't been the best. And I think kind of small
Yeah.
businesses have felt a bit of the impact there. So I think navigating the world of agency or business in general, but I think agency is always kind of slightly up and down by nature. I think that's just been kind of exacerbated with the environment that we're in, and I guess
Yeah.
AI is starting to have a bit of an impact in that as well. So it's been something as a technologist that I've taken a keen interest in, just because it's fascinating, and I look back to kind of my earlier career in tech, back in like the very early noughties, and
Yeah.
I think like some of the stuff that we can achieve now with AI is just like mind blowing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I find it really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, no, it's so true. I am excited to dig into the world of AI with you and the pros and the cons and all of that. I know also, just before we get into it, you also we had the pleasure of basically, you asked us to contribute to your report you put together on AI and sustainability, which we will definitely link to in the show notes. But that came out, just was that, I don't know, a few months ago, a year ago, I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, it's back at the beginning of the year. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we'll definitely link to that. But that's was a fascinating like dive into sort of the pros and cons of AI, and the whole space is moving so quickly. Obviously, that even by the time we put this live, probably something will have changed again. But Matt, I know we want to dive into that, but I would love to hear a bit more about your journey to this point as well, because HiYield, you're a proud B Corp, I know, but in your world, in the world of technology, how have you gotten to this point? Like, tell us a little bit about the story of how Matt got here.
Yeah. So it starts out really with just a genuine enthusiasm and interest in technology. So this is
Yeah,
back into kind of like school back at the end of the 90s, where the web was kind of just taking off as a thing, and out of the back of that, I really kind of got very interested in web technologies in particular. I think
yeah.
it's HTML2 maybe back then, but
HML2, yeah. Who's
it was
keeping count?
very early days, and I kind of had the opportunity to go to college and take the I guess the traditional path, maybe college and a degree, computer science degree, but I kind of looked at the curriculum and just thought that technology, even back then, technology was moving so fast, but I kind
Mm.
of wanted to be kind of more relevant. So I went straight into industry, got a
Right.
position in an IT role
Mm.
in a manufacturer actually down in Cornwall. I was in their IT
Right.
team, and that learned all about kind of processes, systems within within a manufacturing environment. Learned about things like Kanban and Lean all the way
Okay.
back
Yeah.
then in
Yeah.
you know a manufacturing setting. Um, Stayed there for a bit, and then I went to agency side, and I joined a digital agency making websites and kind of e-commerce shops, and that was kind of my first role as a techie in an agency
Yeah.
environment. And I just really loved the pace of change. So you could be working on an e-commerce site in one sector in the morning, and then working on a completely different business proposition in the afternoon, and talking to those customers, understanding the pains of each industry, and it just makes you learn a bit more about business, a bit more about how, some problems are definitely shared, whereas other problems are
Yeah.
specific to industry. And as part of that, I got the really great opportunity to build a web platform for two doctors. It
Oh
was
wow.
a clinical management system, so it was basically looking at people with long-term health conditions and monitoring them over time. And this was back
Sure.
in 2009. So, you
Wow.
know,
So this is pretty early on in the world of
yeah.
tech, and health tech wasn't a thing.
No, it's certainly health tech probably wasn't, it wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
And we think the NHS is relatively kind of behind the times now. Back then, it was frightening. So we were doing like the first phase of digital transformation, which was really taking a very much a paper process and moving it to a digital process.
Mm.
So I worked on that, and what we would call these days the MVP. Well, it wasn't really an MVP back then;
Yeah.
it was just like the first version. I built the
Perhaps
first version,
better that the
maybe
term
simpler
MVP never
times.
existed. Yeah.
um, so I built that as kind of lead dev at the agency, and the founders went and used that to kind of go in front of a few potential customers. They got their first few customers, and then they got third party investment, and they offered
Mm.
me a job to come on board as their kind of full time lead developer. And I was like 21 at the time, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like fun. Us
Yeah.
going to startup land.
Let's do
Um,
it.
yeah, so that was my first jump into startup land. And when I joined them, kind of did 2.5 years there. Kind of worked as mainly their CTO because it's a very small kind of startup team.
Yeah.
Again, built out the skills around talking to customers, learning about kind of digital products, learning about customers' pain points and what to build. And it was kind of through my time there that I went to quite a few I guess health tech conferences, for want of a better word. And at one of them, I met someone who was just about to build another startup called Step Jockey, which was more, it was in the health space, but more health and well-being.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
felt like I've done clinical health for a bit, and that's great because you can tangibly see, the difference and impact that you're making for people, which is really important to me. But it's clinical health, and it's quite a dry and
Mhm.
sometimes uninteresting subject matter. So this felt like it was in the health sphere, so it was still doing good, but it was a bit more light, a bit more energetic, a bit more vibrant, maybe. So I jumped
Yeah.
across to Step Jockey, which was all about incentivizing people in the workplace to be more active in their daily
Sure.
roles.
Sure.
Um, so that was a 5 year startup story from
Wow.
birth to death, really. So yeah, I got involved early days. We got some investment from what is now Innovate UK, but I think
Mm.
it was called something slightly different back then. So this is like 2014, and
Mm.
built like the first version. Got some really good traction. It was kind of targeted towards bigger um, kind of companies. So we had Disney, Comcast,
Wow.
Barclays, HSBC. They were all kind of customers.
Wow.
Um, and got some good traction. Did our own kind of investment round, so raised like 650K
Mm.
as a seed round, and then continued to build out the platform, build out the team. Like all startups, bit of a wild ride.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then ultimately, kind of really really trying to get the business model to work. And I think, you can use terms like product market fit and stuff like
Sure.
that, and maybe we didn't have product market fit, and I think ultimately, we couldn't sustain ourselves as a business, and we couldn't see a path. So we couldn't see a path to kind of break even or growth. So
Got it.
ultimately, had to take the choice to shut the business down, which was
Yeah.
difficult. But
Yeah.
what I always say is, I think I learned so much on that journey.
Yeah.
Um, Learned about all the things that you can do wrong, all the things that you'd change if you had the opportunity to do it
Sure.
again.
Yeah.
So it was, and met some amazing people along the way. So I
Yeah.
think I think it was a really great experience, and as that was coming to an end, I really was trying to figure out what was next for me. So I
Mm.
had I had bags of experience in tech. I'd kind of moved. I'd moved to be that kind of crossover between tech and product almost. I guess
Yeah.
a CPTO, I think they're called these days, if you want to put another acronym to them.
Almost a Star Wars character there,
Yeah.
I
Um,
think.
so I was trying to figure that out, and um, I thought, let's combine my previous life in agency with like the startup journey I've been on, and let's found a new company, which could be a founder-friendly agency, and
Yeah.
that's what HiYield was from day one. So it
Right,
was
right.
it was myself and two other people from the startup I was working in. So they were on my
Okay.
tech team at the startup. I said, "Come, let's kind of start this thing together." So we started it, and it was very much tech orientated to start with. We were all techies. That was kind
Yeah.
of very much staying in our lane, working with founders and startups, helping them build their MVPs or initial phases of their platforms. And it was the three of us, for a good 6 months, and then we started
Mm.
gradually adding people to the team.
Got it.
Um, and now, if we fast forward kind of six and a half years, we're kind of very much a full service digital product studio. Got an in-house design team, dev teams, product managers. So we kind of
Amazing.
have all the ingredients to make digital products. And I think I think your question around kind of doing good and
Mm.
sustainability, that very much is always been something that I've felt the most purpose in my work when I've been engaging in those areas.
Mm.
And I think as we've built the team and the culture at High Yield to the place where we are now, we have a collection of humans who care about what they do. Um, and I think about 18 months ago now, yeah, it was about 18 months ago, we decided that, our brand had served us well for the first 3.5, 4 years, but actually it was time for a bit of a change.
Mm.
And we needed to kind of make the brand really kind of shine a light on who we were now as a team, which was
Yeah.
different from where we started. And a fundamental part of that was bringing in this area around kind of climate conscious digital product studio, and
Sure.
taking everyone's deep beliefs that we should have sustainability and purpose as, driving factors for what we do, and
Mm.
bringing them to the forefront of the brand.
Mm.
And that's kind of the high yield that you see today. It's very much that collection of individuals who kind of deeply care about sustainability, and working on purpose-led projects.
Amazing. What a wonderful story to follow there, Matt. It's actually fascinating hearing about your career over that time, and how much I know that at least the London tech scene, but the tech scene worldwide and tech are now, and how intertwined like the web has become with our daily lives is over that career. It's incredible to hear that, and I'm it's really wonderful as well to hear how your own business has kind of changed over time. And I'm curious with the mainly because like I know this is something sometimes that I've talked to others about, like the focus on sustainability and climate and a lot of these good things, like how much that is driven by you as a team versus from customers. Like I'm curious, you were saying at the start how difficult it can be at times where, businesses have less money and there's less spend going on. Like, how do you deal with that in a commercial aspect? Like, businesses want a website, want a mobile app, want a product. Where does sustainability come into that conversation, if at all?
Yeah, so I think this one is fairly nuanced in
Yeah.
how we would answer this, because I think the answer to this is evolving and constantly
Yeah.
evolving, and I think what we're seeing is a generational shift in the workforce, and I
Mm.
think I don't want to like stereotype demographics, but I think we have kind of um, age demographics where sustainability probably hasn't been a factor in their
Yeah.
daily lives or their business decisions, and I think those people are probably starting to leave the workforce maybe, and we
Mm.
have kind of this movement of kind of millennials and Gen Z coming through and taking positions within organizations. And I think as age demographics, we feel like I feel that like those demographics probably have a more conscious attitude towards the climate and
Yeah.
sustainability, and I think it's probably more a factor in their kind of daily lives, their personal lives, in the choices that they make and the brands that they engage with, the food that they buy, eat. And I think inherently that will flow through to business and those individuals as they kind of assume roles where they're decision making roles, that will
Mm.
start factor their purchasing decisions in the organizations they're in. So I feel that's like the direction of travel. I
Yeah.
feel like where we are right now um, is slightly more complicated,
Mm.
probably maybe by the change of government
Mm.
in the US, and maybe ripping up the ripping up of the rule book around kind of climate
Yeah.
and sustainability. I think that probably will have a bit of an impact, and I think for us, um, it's it's probably we probably don't have the brand that some organizations have in our space. For example, Whole Grain Digital, they've been doing very sustainable WordPress sites for a long, long time.
Mm.
And they have the brand, and they have people that go to them because they
Mm.
they build sustainable WordPress websites. We probably don't have the brand in that space. So for us, we don't necessarily get approached for a
Mm.
sustainable website. Sometimes we
Mm.
do, but it's not the majority of the time. It's not we're approached for a sustainable website. But what I think happens is we go through the process of, you know, identifying what they need, have the conversations with them. And what we always do is say that sustainability is fundamental to how we deliver our websites and
Sure.
products. So, you know, you're going to get a sustainable website whether you like it or not, because that's just
Tough luck.
that's just how we work. And it's not an extra that we charge anyone. That's just we do that because that's how we believe that we should create websites or products. And I think when you kind of pitch it in that way, you get people who maybe didn't have that on their radar, and then they'll look at your proposition that has sustainability almost baked in, and they'll look at others where that isn't part of the proposition. And then
Yeah.
I think there's so many great agencies for actually having that sustainability edge does have a positive effect on people opting to go for us versus others.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, it's appreciate the honesty in that answer as well, Matt. Yeah, it's certainly one way of handling it, and I know that often focusing on the sustainability, or almost always focusing on the sustainability, whether people care about it or not, like the other benefits of doing that are so innumerate that actually, like, you can usually everyone around the table is happy and like not fighting it.
Yeah.
um, uh, I was gonna ask, and I know that we want to talk about AI, but it feels like the natural evolution of this conversation would be to just dig in a little bit on what you think of as digital sustainability, and how you would sum that up, because yeah, it's a movement that obviously we're very passionate about. And you mentioned whole grain, who have, I know Tom's written a book about digital
Yeah, yeah,
sustainability
completely. Yeah.
and things. So when you think about that, what does that mean to you, Matt?
Yeah, I think in terms of how we look at digital sustainability, I think it's probably twofold. And I think um and this came out in I did a talk on digital sustainability to a local manufacturing group.
Oh,
Um
amazing. Yeah.
which was interesting because it wasn't, I think manufacturing has always had sustainability, you know, as very much high up in their kind of level of priority, and a lot of that's because it's mandated, by
Yeah.
government that
Yeah.
sustainability is in place. But in terms of digital sustainability, it's not, you're kind of in scope free. It's
Mm,
not mandated in any way. So I think it's a bit of a blind spot for people. But
sure.
when we think about it, we think about as a team. Um, when we're creating a website or an app or a mobile
Mm,
app, what's the carbon that we're creating when we do that?
mm,
That's from, travel, commuting, the equipment that we buy, just your standard kind of assessment for the carbon that you're creating as a business. So we do that, and we do carbon reporting as a whole business,
mm, mm,
and then we attribute the time that we spend on a project, and from that, we kind of infer the amount of carbon we've created on a specific project.
sure.
So what we do
Sure.
is we offset that carbon as part of the project creation process. So
Mm,
we do that through various different, we do some of it through ecology, but we've also got a partnership with a local rewilding project down in Cornwall,
oh,
where we
amazing.
kind of sponsor them to do some really great work in the
Oh,
community.
cool.
And we make sure that we're offsetting kind of the carbon we've created on the creation of that project. Offsetting obviously isn't, it's not the answer, but it feels like it's the right thing to do while we're continually improving how we deliver lower and lower carbon digital products. And I think that's kind of the second area. It's what we actually deliver, making sure that that has the most efficient carbon footprint, digital carbon footprint that it can have. So where it's hosted, the if we're talking about a website, making sure that those pages are as small as they can be,
Mm,
making sure that images are compressed, videos are compressed, also making sure from a coding and scripting point of view that we're reducing the amount of code, not duplicating stuff. And then
yeah.
also all the way up to design and how we're designing the flows on the page, not putting over complex, over
Mm,
designed elements in there, making sure that we're keeping it focused around simple and sustainable practices, but actually that perfectly aligns with
mm,
high performance and high converting websites and apps. So like
yeah.
you say, we're not doing this to necessarily you know be much better in terms of sustainability. We we are, in effect, that is
Mm.
a byproduct of it. But what it's also doing is it's creating really good quality products and
Yeah.
services. So it's
Yeah.
not, then the two are not kind of mutually exclusive. They go kind of
Yeah.
hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah. You're not saying it's going to be really sustainable, but it's going to be a rubbish
Yeah,
website. You're going to be embarrassed by it.
yeah, completely. Yeah,
um, no, 100%. Hope it goes without saying, but certainly our approach too. And I think, so much of the digital sustainability kind of movement is about, in my opinion, it's about just building good products, good software, good websites, and maybe sometimes that takes more work, but the result is something that can be proud of, I think, and that
yeah,
actually has a really positive impact. It's really really wonderful to hear your summary there, Matt. Um, I guess maybe that naturally takes us on to the topic that we we definitely want to unpack, which is everyone's best friend, AI. I'm not sure if any listeners have heard of AI, but it's been mentioned in the news and in the tech media once or twice. Um, and I think you posed this question to me, Matt, or you posed this question in our notes of, is AI the enemy of sustainability? Um, Discuss.
yes, yeah, and that what a topic to unpack.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think. Um, again, very much multifaceted. I think if you look at kind of the raw fundamentals of AI as a technology, especially kind of generative AI and what we've seen over the last kind of 2 to 3 years in terms
Yeah.
of, Chat GPT and Claude and Gemini. So all of the kind of the big players in the AI market. The technology that underpins them is incredibly resource hungry in terms of infrastructure and compute. So inherently, that has a big impact on the environment. So that the data centers that are used to train these models, but also to kind of give access to these models, they've you know they've been growing quite wildly over the last few years to support the demand. The fact that you kind of have GPU farms training these models, and that they're kind of very high performance, very power hungry GPUs that are used, for used constantly for weeks while they're training these models. I don't think you can really get around the fact that AI as a technology isn't sustainable in terms
Mm.
of its energy consumption. Really, the data centers, most of the energy is used in cooling because these kind of GPUs and other kind of compute power, because it uses a lot of electricity, it generates a lot of heat. So it's the cooling and then kind of the water and resources around these data center that sometimes gets used without any regard for kind of the local environment and community. So yeah, AI does have a really big impact on sustainability. So I think that was kind of, when we set this out as is AI the enemy of
Mm.
sustainability, that was something that we were posing as kind of a question to the community as much as kind of trying to answer it ourselves. And the feedback that we got when we did the report on this was that 62% of the people or the businesses that we kind of surveyed on this, their biggest kind of their biggest kind of reason for reading and contributing was to figure out kind of around AI and its digital carbon footprint. So I think people have already clocked on to the fact that AI, certainly people in our industry, but I think probably slightly wider because AI has become so mainstream. But as a technology, yeah, it's not the most sustainable, which I think is a challenge because as we want to keep pace with the industry, and we want to kind of use all of the great services and abilities out there, you just have to be a bit more diligent about how you're using them, how you're engaging with them. Um, and I think there's also some kind of responsibility on the creators of these large models to make sure they can reduce the dependency on large volumes of compute to train the models, for example. And I think that's why there was a lot of fanfare around DeepSeek when they kind
Mm.
of released their R1 model, because it sounded from first kind of first as it entered the news market that they'd actually managed to train this model in a much less time
Mm.
than ChatGPT or OpenAI have trained their models. So it felt like that was one kind of interesting, because obviously the markets kind of the money markets caught onto that as well and felt,
Mm.
oh, actually maybe we don't need all of these GPUs anymore because these guys have just trained their model on a lot less. And it was quite good for sustainability. Whether, I think once you dig into the facts, I think there was a few smoke and mirrors there about actually how efficient that model was. But I think what it will have done is um, it would have been very much noticed by the big AI, generative AI players like OpenAI,
Mm.
and they'd have gone, well, actually, we can train our models faster. So again, it's. I think we're in the position where we've got a number of main platforms when it comes to generative AI, and they will all start copying tactics from each other,
Mm.
and hopefully some of these tactics, like that one, will end up with more sustainable models at their base. But I think there's still a lot of questions around kind of that sustainability of the training, definitely, and the efficacy of that as well. And what we're starting to see is a few more alternatives out there, like
Mm.
GreenPT
Mm.
is one that has kind of come on my radar a few times recently. So they're very much taking a model and hosting it somewhere where it's very sustainable, and looking at their supply chains and making sure they're all very sustainable. So again, the training of that model probably hasn't been particularly sustainable because that's still
Yeah,
incredibly power hungry. But at least the inference, the usage of that model is being done in a more sustainable way. So I think again, as AI evolves and matures, I think we'll see more sustainable approaches to it.
absolutely. I'll give a little plug for another episode of this podcast because we actually have the founder of GreenPT
Cool.
on the show, which yeah, I think that'll have come out or it's coming out very soon. So that is an interesting point, though, Matt. I think in that, like, um, for the future, like, how do consumers and businesses treat AI? Should we be treating it as this more precious thing that we only use occasionally, or should we be seeking out the more sustainable focused uh products and services that exist in the space? Probably a bit of both. um it maybe AI will actually help us come up with many bigger answers to sustainable challenges in the future. All manner of possible outcomes in the future. Do you have any views on that yourself, Matt?
Yeah, I think it feels like it's a little bit of all three of those
Yeah.
things, really. I think there's
Yeah.
definitely some like fair usage and responsible usage of AI. And I think that's probably the responsibility of individuals, but also,
Mm.
where it's used in an organization setting, it's kind of the responsibility of the organization to set some principles around, when and when not to use AI, like an AI
Yeah.
cheat sheet or something
Mm.
like that, to go, don't use it for some very basic kind of text generation. Don't use it for a one paragraph email, for
Mm.
example. Make sure you're using it where you're actually going to get some value for the carbon that's created in doing that. So I think fair usage is definitely something that needs to be considered. I think having obviously at the moment we've got some very predominant forces in the industry, but it's hard to look beyond in terms of
Mm.
OpenAI's ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, Perplexity. There's five or six really big ones that dominate. But what I think we will see is more brands like GreenPT that are actually taking the the technical structures of a large language model and packaging it up in a more sustainable way. And I think that really translates to us as individuals and organizations being conscious about where we buy our goods, and thinking more about kind of the whole supply chain. And obviously, that's I think is very relevant, with EcoSend, for example, in terms of there's lots of there's lots of email marketing platforms out there, but actually, if you look at your supply chain, and as we do as an organization who use services like that, then you have to start considering where can we
Mm.
improve our carbon footprint, and as a consequence, how do we engage differently with suppliers, and what suppliers do we engage with to kind of make that a reality, I guess. So that's definitely kind of those two areas. And then the third area around how, I guess the positive, net positive in terms of the change you're making. So if you can look at like a very legacy technical process that maybe you've had within your business for a long time, and maybe it's an overnight process that runs all night. Let's not forget that all of these, every bit of technology still needs compute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people's systems are in the cloud these days, so they're sat in a big data center somewhere that's consuming a lot of power. So AI is not it's not new here in terms of how it's using energy. It's using a lot more energy than some of the other technologies, but these technologies still use energy. So if you're looking at maybe that legacy long running process that is taking 8 hours a night to run because it's very legacy code, very procedural in how it's doing it, and you can replace that with something or like a set of AI agents that maybe run ad hoc when they need to run, and they only take 10 minutes to run the same process.
Mm.
Then actually, the net result of that is going to be a positive one in terms of how you've deployed AI in a much more efficient way over your current business processes. So I think that again, it's spotting the use case, um,
Mm.
and really doubling down on how you can drive efficiencies to get the best and the most sustainability out of AI.
Yeah, it's really, really great to hear your take on it, Matt. Like, as always with these topics, it's never good or bad. There is
Yeah,
nuance abounds in the discussion, and very good to hear your thoughtful take on it. For what it's worth, I think one of the things I think has been positive for the digital sustainability movement is I do think that AI has actually brought digital sustainability as a concept into the minds of a lot more people as well. And I think for a long time, digital sustainability was like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's in the background somewhere. But
yeah,
now when I talk to like family members and friends that are not in our world at all, that are like, oh yeah, AI uses a lot of energy. AI is quite a big consumer of data centers, and and I think that has broken through into like mainstream awareness to an extent. And um I think as with all of these movements, it's very hard to do anything without first like awareness. And so I think if we're starting to get that awareness there and that understanding, then yeah, I'm hopeful that that will lead to change, and consumers being more aware, maybe more demand from consumers leads to more of these providers being more conscious themselves. Fingers crossed.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's definitely given much more visibility to the technology, and like I said, all of these technologies are have a digital carbon footprint. AI
Yeah.
exacerbates that, but at least it has made it a more mainstream topic of
Mm,
conversation.
yeah, yeah. Um, Matt, I know we could easily spend the rest of the day talking about this, but I'm conscious we're already at time. Was there any parting thoughts you wanted to share? Anywhere you wanted people to go to learn more, to check out?
Yes, definitely check out the "Is AI the Enemy of Sustainability" report that we put together.
Yeah.
So you can find links to that on the HiYield website, hiyield.co.uk. But I know you're going to
Awesome.
include a link to it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had some really great contributions from the digital sustainability community there. James, thank you again for your contribution to that report as well.
Credit to everyone but me, please.
Yeah. Um, so there's some real great voices in the community there, and some really great insights. So that's definitely one to look at. And I think for me, that maybe the parting thought is around the direction of travel for AI, and where it will go over the next. I keep on saying like 2 to 5 years, and then something seismic happens, and I go,
Yeah.
maybe I should be thinking 6 to 18 instead, or maybe I should just be thinking 3 to 6. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but I think what we will find um, in the future of AI is a sense of mature, like any technology has this kind of initial hype phase where it's used, and there's a lot of hype around it. There's a lot of kind of potential and possibility that's kind of gets over exaggerated, and it becomes kind of the magic bullet to everything. A bit like our friends in the Web3 community, probably saw maybe 5 years ago. That I think I think AI fundamentally has a bigger part to play than kind of Web3 technologies, because I think there's actual tangible use cases on the daily. Um, but what we will see is it mature, I think, and we will see less usage of it in our products and services where we've got AI. I call it kind of AI on the side. So you
Mm,
have your existing product, and then you have an AI agent sat on the side that
mm.
interacts with the product and does things for you. So that's kind of the phase we're in at the moment, which is driven by hype and demand and one product going, our competitor's got an AI agent. We need an AI agent that sits on the side of the screen. But as we reach maturity, I think AI will be baked more into the fundamental workings of our products. And I think that's the parting note for me is as a kind of community, a digital community, really think and try and understand um, what the problems we're trying to solve with AI as a technology are, rather than let's just stick an AI assistant on the side of our app. And I think if we start doing that, we'll have more responsible use of AI. We'll have less carbon footprint, but ultimately we'll have better experiences for our customers because it will be a more thoughtful way to use AI as part of the product.
I love that. That is a great way to wrap. Thank you, Matt. That's yeah. I think there's so much in today's episode. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be taking away to think about. Yeah, did we need to slap AI on everything in our product? Yeah. Thank you, Matt. It's been wonderful to discuss, and yeah, I will make sure we link to the report in the notes, and do check out the HiYield website as well. I think it's just a beautiful example of a really well-crafted website, and yeah, and thank you again, Matt, for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, James. It's been wonderful. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. And
Cheers.
thank you, everyone, for listening today. If you've enjoyed the episode, you know what to do. Please do give it a like, give it 5 stars, give it more stars if there are more stars available than that. Give it a comment. Do tell your friends and family, colleagues about the episode. It's always wonderful to share stories like Matt's. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.